Welcome to Talkin SEC. Writer, photographer, and producer Phillip Jordan discusses the latest news and breaks down the biggest games with the best analysts around. Now, from Southeast Alabama, a state that knows its sports, here is Phillip Jordan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to Talking SEC. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan, from Last Word on College Football, where I cover the Auburn Tigers, and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Woods Football. Got a jam-packed episode today of Talking SEC. I'm going to be joined by two great guests. We're going a good hour here on the show here on a Wednesday. First, I'll be joined by Taylor Jones. He is the managing editor for the Auburn Wire. We'll get into the Auburn Tigers hiring Hugh Freeze, his thoughts on the hire, benefits of Hugh Freeze, why it didn't go right with Lane Kiffin, and much, much more on the hiring of Hugh Freeze, the 31st head coach in Auburn football history. Then I'll be joined by Jay Stevens from Locked On Buckeyes and the Jay Stevens podcast. Yes, I know you're saying, why are you bringing on an Ohio State guy on SEC podcast? Look, they just played Michigan. We'll talk about the Ohio State-Michigan game. We know there's probably going to be an SEC team playing Michigan if things go like they're supposed to this Saturday. And just say, if Ohio State gets in the playoff, we could see an SEC team, Georgia, maybe Alabama, who knows, play the Buckeyes as well in the playoffs. So we'll get an idea on them. And then me and Jay will talk about the latest college football playoff rankings. And we'll also have that discussion. What if the final spot came down to Alabama or Ohio State? Who should get the nod? I'm going to throw a little wild card at you in that conversation as well. So we'll talk about all that good stuff on today's episode of Talking SEC. You can check out Talking SEC on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. It means a lot to the show if you do that. If you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also watch the show over on YouTube, either at the Phillip Jordan YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on a video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show. Also over on the Talking SEC YouTube channel as well. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com or hit me up on social media at pjordansec. Everybody, welcome back in to Talking SEC. I'm Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football, and joining me to talk things all Auburn football is Taylor Jones, Auburn Wire managing editor. And Taylor, nothing interesting going on at the Plains as we record this on a Tuesday evening. I have not heard of anything of a head coaching hire. I obviously have been sarcastic about it. But anyways, Taylor, I appreciate you coming on. We did this last month, I think the week after Harsin got fired, and now you're here with me again now that Auburn has a new football coach.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about Hugh Freeze. And, of course, thank you again, Phillip, for having me on. Looking forward to talking about him and everything else going on with Auburn football.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We talked last time, and it's just your overall opinion, thoughts on Auburn naming Hugh Freeze the 31st head football coach.
In my opinion, I felt like it was the safest hire. John Cohen mentioned that earlier today, too, talking about that Hugh Freeze was his guy and that they never wavered from that. And it kind of seems to make sense because when I think of him, I think of Gus Malzahn. There's just a lot of things that they do very similar. Of course, Malzahn and Hugh Freeze are really good friends. So it just seems like that's, the go-to guy for Auburn football. Offensively, I think he's a great mind. Developing quarterbacks, I think he's a great mind. I guess now the big thing to see is what's he going to do with his staff? Is he going to bring in a great staff to help develop and also kind of, get back under the side of Nick Saban again? Is he going to have fun running the SEC West? And it's just going to be a lot of fun, not only seeing him on the football field, but now you have Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, Sam Pittman, Jimbo Fisher, and Nick Saban all in the same division. So it's I can't remember where I saw it, but it seems like the SEC Network should have a reality show just with SEC West coaches and all the personalities that they have. So it's going to be a fun ride. I believe so.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting with Hugh Freeze. And look, I'll say this and get your thoughts. Obviously, there's the baggage, what has happened in Hugh Freeze's past, which and for him, when he got asked about it on Tuesday at the press conference, He didn't run away from it. He owned up to it. He talked about it. But first, from just on the field wise, I think this is a good hire for Auburn because the man can coach. I mean, 8 wins every year at Liberty, 10 in 2020. We saw what he did at Ole Miss. I mean, obviously, when you beat Alabama, that helps you out with Auburn people being the new head coach. Just what you've seen of him, just what he can be for Auburn, just on the field, the football coach, what the kind of product Auburn can be with him as the coach.
I think offensively it's going to be a lot of fun. As we mentioned, Gus Malzahn, he's a hurry up, no huddle guy. It's going to be completely out of the shotgun. I think the big thing that Auburn fans will need to look for is his quarterback development. One guy in particular that I think of when I think of Hugh Freeze is Malik Willis, a guy that started off at Auburn, never could quite get the number one spot, losing to Jared Stidham and then ultimately Bo Nix. He goes to Liberty, throws for over 5,000 yards and over 40 touchdowns, and now turned into a third-round draft pick by the Tennessee Titans. So that's, of course, one guy to look at. And, I'm starting to do a project now on all of the top recruits that Hugh Freeze has ever gotten. And you think of what he did with Chad Kelly. You think of what he did with Bo Wallace. Think of what he did with the little time that he had Shea Patterson. And I think we're going to see a resurgence in the quarterback battle. And usually when things go well with the quarterback battle, everything else seems to go well offensively as well. Robbie Ashford, he liked the idea of having Hugh Freeze, but he mentioned today too that he and Willis have a great relationship together. And he said as soon as the news became official, the first thing he did was call Malik Willis. And his quote, was somewhere along the lines of, well, look at what he did for Malik. I think he can develop me into the quarterback that I ultimately want to become. So I think that's probably going to be the one thing that you'll notice right away. Will Robbie Ashford be the guy? Will Zach Calzada be the guy? There's a handful of quarterbacks already in the transfer portal. Are they going to get one of those guys to come in? But either way, you're going to see an improvement in quarterback play under Hugh Freeze. And that's something, as me being an offensive guy, just me personally, it's something I'm really looking forward to on the Plains.
Yeah, and the difference, I think, obviously, and you brought it up, there are the comparisons to Gus Malzahn with Hugh Freeze. It goes beyond the visors, I believe.
Yeah,
the kind of offense they want to run. But Hugh Freeze doesn't wear the sweater vest like
he does
like
not.
Gus,
He publicly denounced those sweater vests.
He did. But Hugh Freeze is going to be more. His offense is more of a passing offense.
Yeah.
I mean, he will run the ball and attempt to run the ball versus what Gus was of course, a run heavy out of the spread. And that's one thing that's interesting. And you talked about Robbie Ashford. When you look at what Robbie Ashford is right now, very, very similar to what Malik Willis was when he left Auburn, when, he wasn't going to be the start quarterback. Tremendous athlete. You knew he had a talented arm, but just not developed as a quarterback. And I know Robbie Ashford, you talked about he's looking forward to Hugh Freeze. He made the tweet yesterday. He was excited. Obviously, you can tell by his tweet about Hugh Freeze. And interesting, in the press conference, Hugh Freeze brought up that touchdown pass that Robbie Ashford threw in the Iron Bowl. And Taylor, I thought he overthrew it. When he threw it, I thought the ball was going to go out of the back of the end zone. It was a beautiful touchdown pass in the Iron Bowl, and Hugh Freeze talked about that. So he sees the potential in Robbie Ashford and what he can do.
Yeah, going back to that pass too, that was something that, of course, on the camera it was like, oh, he's going to overshoot him. But then when you actually saw where the ball was, I don't think he could have perfectly placed it in between those two defenders any better than he did. So that was pretty amazing too. And that's kind of been the one discount I've had with Robbie Ashford so far. And I don't know if it's because of receivers. I don't know if it's because of offensive line or what it is. But he has no problem running the football. He has no problem getting out of trouble. It's just connecting with those receivers and him having time to do so. Another thing that I look at is, he reeled in Laquan Treadwell as a recruiter at Ole Miss, as is DK Metcalf, two guys that did very well at their time at Ole Miss too. So I think not only will he develop the quarterbacks in a great spot, but I think too he's going to try to do everything he can to put the best players on the field with him. And I think that's ultimately going to be the deciding factor in how well Robbie develops under Hugh Freeze. He's got to have better receivers, better options out there for him. And I think Hugh Freeze is going to bring that in.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if this was not a Hugh Freeze recruit, but I believe he was. And just spotting quarterback talent. Jordan Ta'amu was a very underrated quarterback when he was at Ole Miss because he took over when Shea Patterson left to go to Michigan. I believe that was a Hugh Freeze recruit, though. I may be wrong, but that was another player.
I believe he was. That was, I think it was towards the end of his time at Ole Miss, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, so I know he didn't develop him, but he still spotted the talent and,
Yeah.
and brought him in. So, that's one thing, good thing there. But I think the best decision, obviously, we all were wondering, I think, what was going to be of Carnell Cadillac Williams when the new coach came in. And the first thing Hugh Freeze talked about today was that Carnell is not only going to be the running backs coach, but the associate head coach too as well, and talked about how plan on working together to help him learn more about Auburn and get this team where they need to be. If you wanted to get in the good graces really quickly with Auburn people, I think that was a very smart move, and it needs to happen just because the way these players love him.
Yeah, and you could definitely tell when he said that too, is that it wasn't just I feel pressure to do so. It wasn't that John Cohen made me do it. Like he talked about how his schedule lined up the last 4 games of the year as opposed to what Auburn did. He said he got to watch a lot of the games live. He talked about that Texas A&M game specifically, where both teams were 3-6 at the time, but at Jordan-Hare Stadium, you would have thought that it was Deep South oldest rivalry with number 1 and number 4 together, or an Iron Bowl with the SEC West title on the line. He, saw a difference in how the players got up for Cadillac. He saw the energy that he brought, and he said that is going to be the key to keeping the energy that he brings in. It's all going to run through him, and I have to have him by my side in order to get this going. And I could tell he was very sincere about that. I believe that he knows that everything is going to run through Cadillac. Recruiting is going to run through Cadillac. I mean, you could even see it on social media, is that, there were several commits that were saying, hey, thank you, Cadillac. And they were posting pictures with Cadillac saying, hey, I'm glad that you're still going to be here. So I think he knows how important Cadillac is, and he's going to do everything he can, not only to improve the stock of Auburn football, but also probably develop him into a better coach as well, too, because I know Cadillac right now with only 4 games of experience, I know, 3 months ago, that wasn't something that he thought would ever happen. And I think he's a better coach for what happened. And I think he'll be a good head coach someday, but I think he's really going to value this time that he has with Hugh Freeze. And I think he's ready to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's circle back. So this time last week, the story, John Sokoloff out of Mississippi reported that that Lane Kiffin was going to be the next Auburn coach. He would step down after the Egg Bowl. Everybody knows the story. And honestly, everybody thought that's where it was going. Maybe John jumped the gun. I don't know. What do you think happened with the Lane Kiffin situation?
And I mean, I believe that he was truthful when he said that he hadn't received an offer from anybody. But I also kind of wonder at the same time, just by how Lane reacted, of continuing to go after John, and even
destroyed him.
Even after it was official that Hugh Freeze was going to be the guy, still went after him. I got to give him props though. He did say something to his face at the end of the Egg Bowl during the press conference. I mean, I know it's kind of petty, but I do respect him for it, that he at least said something to his face instead of just, kept rattling off tweets that he did. But part of me wonders if Kiffin did think about it, but the news was broken before he wanted it to. And I think that's what caused the reaction to happen. But, did he want to become the Auburn head coach? I'm not really sure. Did he want to, build up a little bit more of a base at Ole Miss before maybe taking the Alabama job? Because I know he and Lane Kiffin, or he and Nick Saban are big friends, and maybe he didn't want to rub him the wrong way in that way. But I think it's just another thing too. He mentioned family, not willing to relocate. That was one of the big things. And when you look back at his coaching career, the longest place that he's been a head coach was at USC, and he was only there for 4 seasons. He was at FAU, I think, for 2 or 3 years. I can't remember. He was at Alabama not that long. He was with the Oakland Raiders for not that long. He was only at Tennessee for 1 season, and now he just completed his 3rd season at Ole Miss. So I kind of wonder if he just wants to settle down for a little bit, or maybe his family was like, hey, we're tired of this moving thing. Let's hang out here for a few more years and kind of see where it goes. I think he's in no danger of losing his job at Ole Miss, as his new contract extension warrants. I think that he's probably got them going in the best direction that they've ever had consistently. I don't know how serious of a candidate he was at Auburn, or how interested he was totally, but I think the news that Sokoloff broke, and I mean, a handful of others too. I mean, you had David Pollock that said the same thing. You felt that Paul Feinbaum and several of the others kind of thought that was where it was headed to. But I kind of wonder if he reacted the way that he did just because of it getting out before, or it got out before he could control the story, I guess. Felt like he wanted to talk about that on his own terms and didn't really get that opportunity. And so that's probably why he got agitated, and that's probably why he's saying at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I feel bad for John Sokoloff to a degree. I mean, it's bad enough if you got a report wrong, but then said coach, and you still got to deal with Lane. That's the whole thing. That's
for as long as he's at Ole Miss, he's going to be an example of everything that happens. We think that this player's hurt or this player may be suspended. It's, did Sokoloff tell you that? It's just going to be one of those things that he's going to have to live with as long as Lane Kiffin's in Mississippi.
Yeah, absolutely. And my thing about why I thought Lane Kiffin would have been a good hire for Auburn was his ability in the transfer portal. And I was talking to some people I know that are Auburn fans. And we just talk with friends and stuff like that. I said, I'm not saying Hugh Freeze can't do that. We just don't know. We know Lane Kiffin's ability in the transfer portal. I mean, look, this is not a shot at Liberty, but a lot of top guys in the transfer portal are not going to say, let me go transfer to Liberty. It's just, that's just not going to be the situation. But now he's at Auburn. That's going to be key. And I know he was asked about it. I know he said he wants to build his team off of high school recruits. But to me, the biggest thing this first cycle, I mean, next week, transfer portal, he's got to really rebuild this roster through the transfer portal because there's a lot of needs on this team. I mean, yes, I know he talked about Robbie Ashford. You bring Zach Calzada, Harold Gardner's there. But as you said, quarterbacks in the portal, it would not hurt to look at any of them. Offensive line has been a struggle. I think linebackers were an issue a little bit on the defense at times this year. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is the transfer portal right now maybe a higher priority than the high school recruits just to get this team back in good footing?
Yeah, I would say so, just based on the offensive line standpoint. Quarterback could be something, but if he feels like he can work with Ashford or maybe Calzada, that may not be as big of an issue. You bring up linebackers too. You have Derek Hall and Owen Papo that are going to be gone this year. Chandler Wooden or Colby Wooden, I should say, is going to be gone as well too. So you're going to be depleted in that area as well. So it wouldn't hurt to look. I haven't looked to see exactly, linebackers and offensive linemen that have put their names in the portal. But as of right now, Cade McNamara from Michigan is in the portal. Another Mississippi guy, Luke Altmaier, that just was put in the portal with Ole Miss. There's a couple of guys to look at as well too. So the transfer portal is going to be interesting, and I think just to build a base, probably wouldn't hurt to have a 1 or 2 year guy in there just to maybe fill the void and further development, but also they can be a great leadership role to those high school seniors that he's hoping to bring in.
So we've talked a lot of positives about Hugh Freeze. Obviously, and as I brought up in the top, the baggage, what happened at Ole Miss, the NCAA stuff. Obviously, the reason why, and that wasn't even the reason why he lost his job at Ole Miss. It was the stuff with the escorts. So for you, what are your concerns with Hugh Freeze?
It's just going to be a matter of, does he behave or not at Auburn? I'm a full believer in, there's, redemption for everybody if they truly want to get better. In his press conference today, you could definitely tell that those things in his past continue to bother him, but he hopes to look past them. And I think from what was reported as well with John Cohen and Dr. Christopher Roberts doing, the background checks, they talked to FBI agents, they talked to fellow coaches, they talked to university presidents from Ole Miss and Liberty and all that, just to kind of, be sure, hey, is he on the right track? Or all the things that he, was accused of doing that ultimately led to his departure from Ole Miss. Does you feel like he's learned from that? Is the situation as bad as it seems? And even after all of that, it seems like everything is going well in favor of Hugh Freeze. The folks in the SEC office, including Greg Sankey, seem to be okay with the hire. So I think as long as he understands that, he's the leash is probably not going to be as long here at Auburn. He's already got a lot of eyes on him right now, just based on social media, and a lot of the people on social media took time to send emails to the president and athletic director as well. So he knows that he's already being watched, and I think that this is a great redemption story for him if he does it. And if it's more, about football and kind of rebuilding a family image, then that Auburn's the best place for him for sure, because you look at the the Auburn family is something that they push, and you look at Bruce Pearl, even though Bruce Pearl and Hugh Freeze, you can't really compare what they two did at their previous institutions, but you look at Bruce Pearl, he's welcomed in Auburn. You look at Cam Newton's history and and how he leaves Auburn and how people are still talking about him. And it's amazing to me that there's so many Carolina Panthers fans here in the state of Alabama because of Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. And so I think if he proves to the Auburn family that he is changed and that he wants to do better for himself, then I think ultimately fans will welcome him in and love him as our own.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, winning cures a lot of things.
It does.
And it was success. And just, I expect Auburn to be a much better team under him than they were Brian Harsin. And with Carnell by his side with that energy, because as he said in the press conference, he said, I'm going to need you to do the running around because I can't do it. I can't do that. But it's going to be fun going through this off season, getting to the spring, and then obviously going in next season. And Taylor, this has been a lot of fun as always. I appreciate you coming on. Kind of short notice how we schedule this, but I appreciate you coming on talking about Hugh Freeze being the new Auburn head coach. If the listeners and viewers want to check you out online, where can they find you and where can they check out the Auburn Wire?
You can visit us on Twitter at the Auburn Wire. And we've got a lot of stories coming up, a lot of stories today on Hugh Freeze, a lot of what he said at the press conference. We also have a photo gallery just of his time at Ole Miss and at Liberty. We got a lot of stories on Carnell Williams as well, and his new position as associate head coach and running backs coach. Had a post on Robbie Ashford too, just a little bit more of what he thinks of Hugh Freeze. And then coming up over the next couple of days, we'll of course try to get everybody caught up on what the talking heads are saying around the nation about Hugh Freeze, what recruits are saying. Of course, basketball coverage coming up at the end of the week too, as the Tigers get ready to take on Colgate. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you can find us at auburnwire.usatoday.com. Check us out.
All right, sounds good. Everybody go check out Taylor. Go check out the Auburn Wire. They do a good job keeping you updated on all things Auburn Tiger sports. And Taylor, appreciate the time, and look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
I appreciate you too, Phillip. Thanks for having me on.
All right, everybody, joining me next, and welcome back into Talking SEC. Joining me next is Jay Stevens. You can check him out over on Locked On Buckeyes and the Jay Stevens podcast, which I have been on a couple of times. I know some of you are probably wondering, Phillip, this is a predominantly SEC show. You talk about football in the South. Why in the world would you have the host of Locked On Buckeyes? Number one, Jay is awesome. He knows all things college football. That's number one. Number two, let's come on. They just played Michigan. There's a chance Ohio State gets back into the playoff picture. They are ranked fifth right now in the new rankings. We'll get into that in a little bit. So an SEC team is probably could be playing Ohio State, and we could have a discussion on an SEC team versus Ohio State. That's why Jay Stevens is on. Jay, I appreciate you coming on and talking a little ball today.
Phillip, your listeners will be wondering exactly what you just stated. A guy who covers a team in the Midwest, why are you having him talk about a Midwestern football team when this is a podcast about predominantly stuff in the South? There's one school in the Midwest that's deserving to be in this conversation and that can consistently compete and beat teams in the Southeastern Conference. It is the Ohio State Buckeyes. Some of you might say, Jay, why are you coming in hot with that take? I only speak the truth, which is why those words came out of my mouth.
I thought you were going to say Michigan was the team that could compete with the SEC. I'm sorry. I had to do it.
That hurt.
Oh, man, it's all good fun. I just had to do it since what happened with the two teams. But, yeah, anyways, I'm glad to have you on. And actually, everybody, I'm going to do this little favor for you. After you get done watching or listening to this, go find the Locked On College Football Rankings Recap. Jay is on there. So, go do that, and also go check out his other podcast too as well. So this is not the first time we recorded this Tuesday evening that Jay is breaking down the college football rankings. But I got to leave with this: all off season, ever since last year when Ohio State lost to Michigan, All we heard about, Jay, was how Ohio State was going to get their revenge. They had them at home. I even saw a thing where was Ohio State actually wearing what looked like Michigan helmets almost in practice. Everything was built up. All we heard, Ohio State's going to do this to Michigan. Michigan wins 45-23. Game that score can be misleading if you look at it a certain way, but I just got to ask, what happened?
It's easy. And when I use this word to describe what happened, you're going to say, Jay, how does that go with what Phillip just said? You'll quickly understand. I would like to say the Buckeyes got bullied against the Wolverines of Michigan. It is not so much bullied physically, but they got out-coached in a way that the Ohio State coaches would not get out of their own way. And the Michigan coaches were 2 or 3 or 4 steps ahead of Ryan Day, of Jim Knowles, of Kevin Wilson, of Brian Hartline. And they got bullied mentally, because a mental battle is getting out of your own way. That's not something these coaches normally do. Being better prepared for the game. There's been times that this coaching staff has not properly prepared the players for the game that they're about to play. So it's not so much getting bullied physically, Phillip, as in the game. If you watched it, Ohio State's defense was doing okay at times, better than you would think. However, when you're on the field for, I think it was like a 7.5 or 8 minute drive, latter part of the third quarter into the fourth, and then shortly after that, that's when the beat down started to happen on the scoreboard. Yeah, it's a mental battle there where they're bullying you mentally, saying, y'all can't stop us. Or if you're Ohio State's offense that is trying to get some things done, but the coaches aren't calling plays to make things work, you're getting bullied mentally. So it was a mental beatdown. The body language of Ohio State was not good. Credit to the Wolverines. Don't like that school. Never liked that school. Some people say Jim Harbaugh should be the next head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. I'm a fan. He was a quarterback of them in the 90s. I say absolutely not. Keep Harbaugh away from Indianapolis, Indiana. Don't want him here. He's coming here this week. It's where I actually live. He's coming here, him and his team, to play in the Big Ten championship game. I will be there, and I will tell you this. For the first time in my life, I'm rooting for the Purdue Boilermakers, and it makes me weird saying that. All my life, if I root for an Indiana team, it's always Indiana, never Purdue. But here is Purdue. I want them to beat down, not just mentally, but physically, the Wolverines, because I'm still kind of hurt and stung off of what happened this past weekend. Ryan Day didn't do a good job. Jim Knowles didn't do a good job. CJ Stroud did okay, but could not overcome things. The defense, secondary still being a liability, so many issues, which is why I really think next year is more intriguing at this point in the year than I think anybody thought it was going to be. Because this isn't one year where Ohio State got blown out by the Wolverines. This is 2 years in a row. Last year, Aiden Hutchinson, a Heisman Trophy finalist. This year, the Heisman Trophy candidate, Blake Corum, didn't play in that game, and the Wolverines' leading rusher still had over 200 yards on the ground. It was bad, embarrassing, and Ohio State is in a fortunate spot to still be in the playoff picture, while on the outside right now, could be on the inside on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and with this game, Michigan, Ohio State, it just, especially with Blake Corum being where he was health-wise, and I'm watching the game, and I'll watch the game from start to finish. I mean, that was appointment television for me. Yeah, I'm an SEC guy. I was going to watch Ohio State, Michigan, because one, it's just a big impact on the playoff situation. And when Blake Corum, you obviously tell it was not going to be his day. He's hurt. That was not going to be a factor. And then the way Ohio State's offense did move in the first half, I was like, Michigan can't win this game, because this is not a game that is where they're set. They are I don't want to say a slower team, a more grinded out team, defensive team. If this is a track meet, Ohio State's got to beat. The second half, Michigan, and I'm going to say, and you can tell me if I'm talking out of turn here, they physically dominated Ohio State for the second year in a row on the line of scrimmage. And C.J. Stroud made some throws. He had some interceptions, I know, in the second half. I mean, he was trying to do some things. I don't know. And it just seemed like once Michigan got that momentum, Ohio State didn't know how to respond. And I'm going to ask you this question. And I saw, look, nobody likes Dan Wolken. If you do, Jay, I'm sorry, but nobody likes Dan Wolken.
I think Dan Wolken is one of those guys on Twitter that I ended up muting. Didn't block him, but I ended up muting during 2020 because he was just making idiotic and stupid statements, and I still see some of his stuff when I click on it. But no, he's one of those guys in sports that I don't try to listen to or read anything that he writes.
So, and I'm not getting critical to him when I say this. And when I say, okay, so Ryan Day going into next year, pressure. I'm not going to say hot seat like Dan Wolken did because, look, I don't think that should be the case. What is the situation if Ohio State does not get into the playoff going into next year? After this, what's the situation?
Very similar to last offseason, where Ryan Day had to fix some things with the coaching staff. But ultimately, I think it's more fixing things with himself. His philosophy, having more comfort with the quarterback, being able to properly prepare a team, and getting them physically ready and mentally prepared for a long, grueling season. Phillip, there was a problem that happened at Ohio State after the bye week. They were rolling, just rocking and rolling at the beginning. Yeah, 21-10 win over Notre Dame. They had a game where they scored 70 points. It was either against Toledo or Arkansas State. But early in the year, you saw DeQuan Finn, quarterback of Toledo. The Buckeyes had an issue with a really dynamic, athletic quarterback who can move the ball and be more of your 10 years ago dual-threat quarterback we saw a lot in high school and college. Well, that kind of happened. J.J. McCarthy, not the best. I don't even think J.J. McCarthy's an above-average quarterback. He's not an amazing guy, but he was athletic enough. He had a big enough arm to surprise Ohio State. I think it's more Ryan Day internally fixing things via his own preparation, his own coaching style, but also in recruiting. There's a fundamental problem with Ohio State. I won't say recruiting right now. It's heavy. You can get D linemen. You should be able to get running backs. He's had a running back decommit, and I think he committed to Miami, I believe. But outside of receiver, quarterback, occasionally O-line, some D linemen, linebacker and secondary is lacking in the recruiting at Ohio State. Yes, Urban Meyer did a phenomenal job of recruiting. He's a great coach, great recruiter. He's a Hall of Famer. But I think Ryan Day is learning. Offensively, he has a great mind. You got to figure out how to do some different things in the recruiting on defense as well. As good as Denzel Burke is, number 10 for the Buckeyes, he's a small cat. And someone recently told me while watching the Egg Bowl, the cats down south look different. It's actually my girlfriend. When she was watching them play, she sent me a text because we watch Ohio State every week. There's a different look and build to those players in the southeast of the country versus those that are at Ohio State. And some of those players in Ohio State come from the southeastern portion of the country. I just don't know why there's a size and speed element that's on those players that's not on Ohio State. And I mentioned that quickly. I know I keep going. I talk a lot, Phillip. So there was I think it was Cornelius Johnson, his long touchdown run, catch and run. And I noticed, even in the second half when Donovan Edwards had his long run, a 74 or 70-plus yard touchdown run, I said, they're not running fast. Like the Michigan guys were not like track speed, competing to be in the Olympics. They weren't that fast. So you're not only talking about a size that's missing, there's a speed element that's missing. Those are two things Urban Meyer brought to Ohio State and Columbus. I think it's hard. We're finding out it's hard to sustain that with the next coach at Ohio State. So I think it's more internal issues, and Ryan Day could be on the hot seat. I think it's he's getting hot. I don't think it's boiling just yet, but if he doesn't fix things, that seat could be boiling in Columbus when he gets back to his office after every game.
Yeah, and we'll get back to Ohio State because we're going to talk about them a little bit more in the next topic. With Michigan, one of the best defenses in the country. I mean, when you look at what they are, third in points allowed per game at 12.7, second in yards allowed in 62.2, and then second in Big Ten in stats. So this Saturday they do play Purdue, heavy favorite in this game. I'm just going to throw that this here, and I know they have some offensive firepower over at Purdue, but when you look at that defense, it's going to be strong. I mean, Purdue they're good. Okay, they're an average team. I give them that. You won your side of that conference. I told people, I said, I feel like the Big Ten championship game was won against Ohio State and Michigan. That was the Big Ten championship game. I think cannot wait till these conferences get rid of divisions and we just get the best two teams in the conference championship games like it should be. But I'll say that I say all that to say this: does Purdue have any chance at upsetting Michigan?
Yes, they do. A small chance, but they have a chance. Jeff Brom, Purdue's head coach, offensive mind. I believe he played quarterback at Louisville back in like the early 2000s. Forgive me if I got that wrong. But he is working on a plan right now to try to crack some holes in the Michigan defense. It's possible, highly unlikely. And also, I don't know the status of Blake Corum. I don't know if he's going to come back and play this weekend. Because I do think Ohio State, if they made just the slightest of adjustments, they could have overcome and even had a chance to win the game against Michigan when Ohio State did not play their best brand of football this past weekend. If you take the 70-plus yard touchdown run and the 80-plus yard touchdown run that Donovan Edwards had in the second half, maybe fourth quarter, that game is not what you see in the final score. So I think what would that be? 14 points that come away, 31-23. That's a whole lot different outlook than if you just take those long runs away. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's a chance because ultimately, without Blake Corum, this offense will not be what it was on Saturday because Ohio State just had some issues and Michigan took advantage of them. But yeah, there's a chance. Trick play here, kick return there, long punt return in the third quarter. There is a chance. And let me tell you, I am here for some Michigan fans to leave Lucas Oil Stadium mad and in their feelings because I will be sitting there smiling. Am I a Purdue fan? No, but I'm happy to be at a game when the Wolverines get upset by the Purdue Boilermakers. I'm here for it. But hey, we got to wait and see, but it's possible. It is possible.
Hey, look, this is the same Michigan team just a week before had a last-minute field goal to beat Illinois. I mean, and no disrespect, Illinois. Brett Bielema, I think, is doing a really good job up at Illinois with what he's doing. Former Arkansas head coach down here, just throw it out there to remind the SEC audience of Brett Bielema. But now let's transition into the newest college football playoff rankings, and then this is where we're getting to some more comparing some teams and a little SEC discussion. Of course, Georgia's number 1, Michigan's number 2. I mean, pretty much what we expect at the top 4. TCU coming at 3, USC at number 4, Ohio State's 5, Alabama 6, and Tennessee 7. I'm just going to 7. That's as far as I'm going to go with the new rankings. Everybody knows where you can go find them online if you want to see all 25. And I look at that, and it's quite interesting, Jay, because I do think TCU, I will go ahead and say this, and I know I'll do my previews tomorrow with Matt Lowe. Georgia should beat LSU. I'll just say that. Michigan should beat Purdue. So I'm not even talking about this, but TCU and USC, they are very, very susceptible to losing this weekend. Kansas State can beat them. And we know most TCU games are an instant heart attack for every TCU fan anyways at the end of the game. USC could not stop air. I mean, that defense is bad. And Utah beat them. There's an opportunity for both Ohio State and Alabama to get back in this thing. What were your thoughts? I know you did it earlier on Tuesday with Locked On, but just what are your thoughts on how the rankings look right now?
So, Phillip, it wasn't just the live show we did with Locked On reacting to the rankings. I actually predicted the top 6 on Locked On Buckeyes show on Tuesday as well. So people that were listening and viewing Locked On Buckeyes, they got that prior to the live show where I reiterated this was what I predicted. This is a weird spot because you mentioned TCU and USC having the chance to both lose this weekend. A few weeks ago, even with the thought of a loss for Ohio State against Michigan, if that was a thought, I don't think anybody would have said a rematch in the playoff was going to happen this year, and I don't think anybody would have said Alabama, Georgia in the playoff in Atlanta, Georgia was going to happen either. But that's what we're looking at right now. We're literally looking at a scenario where it's Alabama, Georgia in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. We're looking at a scenario where it's Michigan, Ohio State, a rematch in the playoff over there in Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl for a chance to go to the national championship over in SoFi Stadium in LA. That's the reality of the situation right now. I think the hot hand TCU, I don't know if their ride is over, but Phillip, that USC team, they could be playing uptight. And you know how Lincoln Riley, how he might be. He won Big 12 championships, didn't get outside. I think he got to the playoff, and I know he had a big game against Georgia in the Rose Bowl a few years ago. But does Lincoln Riley get uptight with his coaching? Is he a little uneasy? Does Utah play with house money, play loose, play free? They won the first game. They can do it again. How does that look? Ultimately, that USC-Utah game on Friday night is what I think a lot of eyeballs should be fixated on. I understand high school basketball in your area. You guys still might be playing high school football late in your state tournaments.
State championship week.
I get all of that. Also, find a way on your phone. There's a lot of ways to watch the games on your phone nowadays. Find a way to tap into the USC-Utah game on Friday night, because I think that's going to be a great sign of what's to come during championship weekend on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm with you. For me, this is a big championship week. Just with the Alabama. Okay, this is dropping on Wednesday. The state championship games. The first one is on Wednesday night, and we've got all day Thursday, Friday. Then I've got championship games on Saturday. So this full in. I know for college football fans, the championship week. For yours truly, for your host Phillip Jordan, this is all things championship. But you're right. And then look, USC does look like that team that could get tight. I mean, because what are they going to do? I mean, will Utah be in head? You know what's interesting with Utah? They messed up Oregon last year. They beat Oregon twice and messed their season up. Are they going to do this 2 years in a row where they're going to mess another team's season up and beat them twice? They beat Oregon in the regular season, beat them in the championship game. They beat USC in the regular season. Will they beat them? And I'll say this. I'm disappointed in Utah. Their defense this year has not been what I thought it would be. It's not what you're used to seeing. Jay, I will go ahead and say I predicted that the Utah was going to be a playoff team going into the year. So I will feel a little bit better about Utah. They pull this one out, but they have a chance to really be ultimate spoilers once again.
They do. They do. And I'm here for it. I am here for chaos this weekend. Phillip, I have not looked and actually written down how many consecutive weeks you've had multiple teams in the top 5 lose in college football. But this past weekend, I don't have my notes on me. They might be on another notebook. Not going to get it. I can't. It's right here as I'm trying to do a little verbal tap dancing. There were 4 teams in the top 9 that lost this past weekend. Wasn't the first time you've seen multiple in the top 10, but there's been a track record this season of multiple teams losing in the top 10 week after week after week. This week, number 2 Ohio, last week's rankings, number 2 Ohio State, number 5 LSU, number 8 Clemson, number 9 Oregon, all lost. I do see a scenario that Clemson honestly could lose again. It'd be so comical. Clemson could lose again, but then you're looking at who in the top 5 loses. My first guess is USC, TCU. USC loses first and then TCU, not just in days. That's honestly who I think has the biggest chance of losing. My gut tells me that the upsets, they're not over yet. And this could be a weekend where we see multiple teams in the top 10 lose once again. Most teams in the top 10 are not playing. Granted, you're playing number 3 versus number 10, so one of them is going to lose and fall out. That's expected, similar to number 2 versus number 3 last week between Michigan and Ohio State. But I do see a scenario where you can get multiple teams in the top 10 losing again. USC, I got them on upset alert. And honestly, I think K-State is probably going to be on the outside in this conversation of a team losing this weekend. But football's fun, man. I went through all that. I love this game. And I expect chaos this weekend.
So 2 teams that are hoping for some chaos, Ohio State and Alabama. Now, I've had so many people in the last couple of days since Saturday, since Alabama won the Iron Bowl 49-27. Can Alabama get back into the college football playoff? That seems like a very far-fetched idea. So I've been asked what needs to happen. And I have to tell people the safest way is TCU and USC lose, Ohio State and Alabama get in. Now, obviously, we know the rankings. They put Ohio State at 5, Alabama 6. But I told people, I said, I wouldn't be shocked they put Alabama ahead of them just because they've already done it. They did it last week when they put a 2-loss LSU ahead of a 1-loss USC. Not the same thing with teams, but just they've shown they're capable of doing that. So I wonder, and it's going to be interesting. We know where they're ranked now, but we all know the last ranking is the one that matters. And we've seen them have teams jump others that didn't play before. That's another thing with the committee. They've done some out there weird things in the past. Me and Jay are about to do a few minutes of just comparing the two. Now, the Alabama fans, it was the Auburn fan defending Alabama, just kind of how it's going to go this on here. So just get over it. Row Tide. Anyways, you look at Alabama, and I'm just going to say, I'm not going to say they should get in Ohio State, but I can say here's their argument why they should be the 4 team if it came down to one of those two. If only USC or TCU lost, and we got to pick between the two. Now, I know Alabama's got 2 losses. Ohio State's got the 1. But when I look at Alabama, the 2 losses are combined 4 points to a Tennessee team at the end of the game, field goal, and LSU at the game, 2-point conversion. And I'll just say from the Ohio State, if you wanted to say why Alabama could go over Ohio State, in my opinion, the last impression means a lot. What you did last means a lot. And the last time you saw Ohio State play football, it wasn't pretty. So that would be my argument to put. Okay, well, let's go ahead. This show's called Talkin SEC, and Alabama's from the SEC. Let's just go and throw it out there because everybody expects me to say that anyways. Let's just stay on brand. But tell me, Jay, why would Ohio State deserve to be over Alabama if that scenario came up?
Let's keep it simple. I like simple things. I'm a simple guy. So let's keep it simple, Phillip. One team has 2 losses. Another team has 1.
Mm-hmm.
They both play 12 games. Neither one of them have a shot to play a 13th right now this weekend because they're not playing in the conference championship game. One team has 2 losses. Another team has 1. Let's just keep it there and keep it simple for everybody listening. In what world do we play our respective schedules? I understand. You might say, well, the SEC's better. Well, the Ohio State didn't lose to a team that has 3 losses. Now, currently 3 losses.
Yeah, LSU.
Alabama did. Ohio State lost to a team, the number 2 team in the country, playing for the conference championship. As much as you want to say that when you lose holds weight, which I agree with you, with time in the year you lose, that means something. You also got to factor in who you lose to. Now, the LSU one is one thing. That's just one team that they lost to. If we just go if that was the only loss, take that alone by itself. Ohio State, even though they got beat, and honestly, the final score does not show how the game was. I mean, if it was closer in I think it was 24-20 at the end of at halftime, and you would think, oh, adjustments, Ohio State could overcome a 4-point deficit. That did not happen. I think who you lose to and when you lose does matter. And I say that knowing that when Ohio State won their last national championship, they lost to Virginia Tech in week 2 of that season. If that came the final week prior to conference championship week, that loss looks a whole lot worse than it does during week 2. Alabama has the luxury of having their losses not be recent, but they're still losses. The win-loss record alone, look at stats. I think a lot of them favor Ohio State. Haven't looked at them recently. Strength of schedule, strength of record. That's take that for what it's worth. But I really do think, though, the records and who you lose to, the records of the teams you lose to, all that stuff matters, which is why the committee's been high on Ohio State all year, and they're still high on Ohio State right now. Alabama needs more chaos than Ohio State to make the playoff, but it's not crazy to say 2 teams in the top 4 lose this weekend, and both Bama and Ohio State are in the playoff. And I honestly think, Phillip, the playoff needs that. The playoff needs these 2 schools in there simply for brand recognition and to get more eyeballs and money. I am not a fan of playing these playoff games on New Year's Eve. Never have been, never will be. It's weird that this year, I believe New Year's Eve is on a Saturday, so I guess it's a little bit better than playing it on a Friday or a Thursday, whatever the case may be. But people are going to be out. What's the best chance for you to get all eyeballs that are out at a bar or at a party to focus on football? to have Alabama and Georgia and then Ohio State, Michigan in the playoff. Now, granted, the committee cannot dictate that, who's in the Final Four, but if there's chaos this weekend, that's the reality of the situation. Those could be the matchups this weekend. And on New Year's Eve, having that, my goodness, everybody's going to be watching. 17 million just watched Ohio State, Michigan Thanksgiving weekend. Could it be 17.5 or 18 million or 19 million on New Year's Eve? It's possible. It's really possible. I think the committee wants that to keep this train rolling and make all the money they can.
So, Jay, are you familiar with professional wrestling?
No, not at all.
So, do you know the term of a heel turn?
I could heel turn. You turn the heel. That's the best I can give you.
Where the good guy quickly turns on the audience and goes bad.
Oh.
That's what I'm about to do to Alabama, because I'm about to throw something else at them. You notice I mentioned who was number 7, right? Why is Alabama ranked ahead of Tennessee? Because Tennessee's got the same record. They've got 2 losses too. I know why. It's Alabama for one. And look, all things considered here, Alabama's losses are by 4 points. Tennessee got beat by 2 touchdowns by Georgia. And then they got blown out by South Carolina, and they lost their quarterback, Hendon Hooker. But still, if I'm a Tennessee fan right now, I'm saying, whoa, why is this an Alabama versus Ohio State argument? Why isn't Tennessee in there? Because Tennessee's got a better resume with their wins, in my opinion, than what Alabama has. Right now, the only team that Alabama has beat that is currently in the top 25 of the college football playoff is number 24, Mississippi State. Before that, their best win was against Ole Miss. And at the time, Arkansas was 20. Arkansas was a 6-6 football team. Tennessee's got a better resume. So I'm just saying, Alabama fans, y'all are getting a little bit of benefit of doubt because you are Alabama. But if I'm that number 17 Tennessee, I'm thinking right now, we beat Alabama. Why aren't we number 6? Why aren't we the one being compared to Ohio State if it came to a 2-loss SEC team versus a 1-loss Big Ten team?
You mentioned Tennessee. I think one thing that's helping Ohio State right now is Penn State being number 8.
That too. That's
because
big.
You're splitting hairs between 10-2 Penn State, 10-2 Clemson, 10-2 Tennessee, 10-2 Alabama. I'm not saying Penn State's better than Alabama. I'm not saying that. I don't believe they're better than Tennessee, but that ultimately boosts Ohio State up in the rankings. And you said it so well. I think Tennessee could fall. I think if Hendon Hooker's healthy, they might put Tennessee above Alabama. Just it's a thought out there. Mm-hmm. When your starting quarterback is out, the human element factor comes in, which is why I think the committee has Tennessee 7, Alabama 6. Now, I think if those two teams played and Hendon Hooker was healthy, then Tennessee beat him earlier, right?
Yeah. Talking about beat Alabama, yeah.
Yeah. So I think if those two teams played again this weekend and Hendon Hooker was healthy, I think Alabama loses again. It might be worse. So it's weird, man. It's a weird world we live in. I am not a. Some people say this is a great year to view and look at expansion, saying this year should be an expansion. Help me understand something. Alabama's got issues. Tennessee has issues. Why in the world do you think they should be in the conversation with Georgia or even Michigan or TCU to be in the playoffs, to have a shot to win the national championship? Now, granted, you might say, Jay, the 4 is too exclusive. That's what we love about college football. You got to run the table or be one of the best of the best of the best to have a shot to win the natty. This is not a great year. This is not a great snapshot because we're playing with fire here, Phillip. We're going to have a 3-loss team win the national championship one year, and there will be an uproar. I recently looked, and I don't know how I got on expansion talk, and I was like, didn't we have a 2-loss team win the national championship? BCS national championship, LSU beat Ohio State. I forget who LSU played the week before or previously in the SEC championship to get to there, but I was like, 2 losses just seems weird now. LSU was better than Ohio State on that day. I just forget all that season. We're playing with fire. We're going to have a 3-loss team win the national championship? Unheard of. But that's going to happen here soon, and I am not a fan of it.
So, me and you going to do something in the offseason because I'm for the expansion of the college football playoff, but we're going to table that because we've already hit 32 minutes. So, that'll be a good
My
conversation.
apologies. I talk a lot.
You're good. You're good. You're good. Hey, it's a podcast. People don't have time to listen to it in one sitting. They can hit pause and come back later. That's a great thing about this. And that LSU team, 2007, Les Miles coach team, he always had the one saying about that team. They were undefeated in regulation that year because both losses came in overtime.
Triple overtime, both of them.
Yeah. So they played and they got lucky against Auburn. I'm just going to leave that there. No, we're going to carry on to it, the next thing. Now, I was always going to do this and really rapid picks. Now, I'm not going to pick these games because I'm going to do that with Matt Lowe on the next episode of the show. So, real quickly, Jay, I'm going to throw these games out. I mean, just give me your picks real quickly on these. A Pac-12 championship game. We've already talked about it. Number 11, Utah versus number 4, USC. USC is a 3-point favorite.
Utah.
I like it. Big 12, number 10, Kansas State, 9-3 at number 3, TCU, or versus number 3, TCU, 12-0. TCU is a 2.5-point favorite.
I got the Horned Frogs of TCU.
Probably give everybody a heart attack at the end, but I like to pick. The SEC championship game, number 14 LSU, 9-3 will be playing number 1 Georgia, 12-0. This is in Atlanta for everybody wants to know. So Georgia will be the unofficial home team here in this one, but Georgia is a 17.5-point favorite.
I think Georgia wins by 3 touchdowns.
I do too. That game really took a different look after the A&M loss. So the American Athletic Conference, the Fighting Gus Malzahn's, the UCF, number 22, 9-3. They will be playing Tulane. Well, yeah, they'll be at Tulane, number 18. They are 10-2. Tulane is a 3.5-point favorite.
Call me crazy. I'm riding with the green wave. Tulane's going to win this one. I love Gus Malzahn. I don't think UCF wins this game.
And then finally, the meaningless ACC championship game. Not really. One of these teams will win a championship. I don't like that meaningless. I mean, it doesn't mean anything for the national championship picture, but still. Number 9, Clemson at 10-2 versus number 23, North Carolina, 9-3. Clemson is a 7.5-point favorite.
Not a good look for Dabo. Back-to-back losses. North Carolina wins the ACC.
Okay, I put on my Twitter a few weeks ago, I thought this was going to happen, but it's before these two decided to start losing games left and right. So, especially when North Carolina lost to Georgia Tech after being up 17-0 2 weeks ago. But anyways, that's some rapid picks. Like I said, if you guys want to know my full picks with me and Matt Lowe, we'll do that on tomorrow's pod. Jay, this has been a lot of fun having you on the show. I'm sure we have not upset anybody in SEC country with our conversation here at all. But I always appreciate you jumping on the show, any show I do. Where can people find you? Where can they find Locked On Buckeyes? And where can they find the Jay Stevens podcast?
You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Phillip, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. It's always fun. We can chop it up and talk ball. You can also send your emails if you want to email me. You want to have a little longer conversation about something I said. Follow me or send your email to jstevens317 at gmail.com. Check out Locked On Buckeyes every Monday through Friday. It's on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listening app of your choosing. Tonight, on the basketball court, Ohio State goes to Duke. Last year, Ohio State upset Duke. Duke is number 1 in the country. Tonight, Chris Holtmann leads his Buckeyes into the Cameron Indoor Stadium. Can it be back-to-back upsets for Ohio State over Duke on the basketball court? I'll be talking about that and reacting to tonight's game. That's at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. I believe that's on the worldwide leader, ESPN. Phillip, it's fun, man. I love this stuff, and I want chaos this weekend in college football.
I have a feeling we're going to get it. Something crazy is going to happen. But anyways, it should be fun. And I appreciate, Jay, you coming on the show once again. I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember, you check out all my written work over on Last Word on College Football, of course, where I covered Auburn Tigers. Plenty of coverage over there when it comes to the hiring of Hugh Freeze by the Auburn Tigers. And we'll be doing some conference championship previews over there on the side as well. So please check it out. All the great writers doing great work over on Last Word on College Football. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordan SEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Really means a lot. If you do that, leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also check the show over on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Phillip Jordan. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and also leave a comment on a video, and I'll read that on a future edition as well. You can always email me at sportstalkphilipjordan@gmail.com. Be back tomorrow. You got 3 episodes this week. We'll be back tomorrow with the final installment of the preview edition of the pod with me and Matt Lowe. We'll preview the SEC championship game. We'll talk all good things college football, get Matt's thoughts on Hugh Freeze being hired at Auburn, and I'm sure we'll run through all the other conference championship games as well. Hope everybody has a great day. You've been listening to Talkin SEC.
Thank you for listening to Talkin SEC. Follow Phillip on social media at PJordanSEC and the show at Talkin SEC Pod. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time when we're Talkin SEC.